Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, is the government picking winners and losers in the insurance game? Also, the V-Team takes a look at the Marriage Protection Act. And Mike Hubbard is hanging on to the speaker's gavel like it's the last life vest on the Titanic. Man overboard. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics with your host, Bill Britt, and the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Good morning.
This past week, ALReporter.com, we had a story about how in 1995, the legislators passed a bill that gave premium tax credits to certain insurance companies. Over the last 20 years, the primary beneficiary of that tax credit has been Alpha. Over the last 8 years, State Farm has signed on as well. Susan, give us a little insight into how these tax credits work.
Well, there's two different ways they work. One is it's based on how many offices you have and how many employees you have per office in the state of Alabama. You get a tax credit for having X amount of those. The other one is for real estate investment in the state of Alabama. Now, unlike most companies, Alpha owns all their own buildings. If they have an agent in a building, that's owned by Alpha. State Farm, for instance, the agent themselves either leases or owns the building. So that gives Alpha a huge advantage in that.
So this bill, when it was passed in 95, the idea was for it to be an incentive to bring business here. But that hasn't really occurred, has it, Claire?
I don't think so. I remember that. I was working in Governor Fob James' administration when that bill passed in 95. And I don't really believe it has. I mean, obviously, Alpha, given that they have agents and they're pretty much in almost all 67 counties across the state of Alabama.
Well, we're not saying that they're doing anything wrong. They're just taking advantage of the system. Now, Governor Bentley has said that he wants to scale back the premium tax credits, Jack, so that it'll add $25 million a year to the general fund budget. There's resistance from Alpha and other insurance companies.
Sure, and I think what Governor Bentley wants to do is to close the gap in the budget without hurting Alabama families. And there are some loopholes like this that, to me, kind of give an unfair advantage to certain insurance companies. But you can't fault Alpha for having a strong lobby.
No.
The year this bill was passed, I believe I read recently, $2.3 million in contributions to legislative candidates.
Right.
So that's how the system has worked or not worked.
That's right. And Alpha and State Farm both have very heavy lobbying. I think it's going to be a difficult task. But as you mentioned, that is a way to not, increase a tax on a product or goods that affects your average person. I mean, it's a normal entity and avenue to look at to save money for the state general fund.
One of the examples that Judge Tim Russell from down in Mobile gave us is he said, look, it's kind of like Jack owns a hardware store and I own a hardware store. The state says, Jack, you only got to charge 2% for the goods that you supply, but Bill, you got to pay 6%. And so Jack can sell his stuff a little cheaper. What Governor Bentley's hoping to do is to level that out so all insurance providers pay pretty much the same amount.
And let me explain that to our viewers that aren't aware of it. The state tax at this point is average 3.6. That's the law. By taking advantage of these tax credits, like Alpha's insurance on their PNC is 1.6%, State Farm's is 2.6%, where someone like Nationwide is 3.5. So that's kind of, the diversity
So there's a
there.
big enough disparity that closing the hole would help solve to a small degree the budget crisis.
That's what Governor Bentley has said.
Right.
That's exactly what it'll do. There's the independent agents around the state have fought this for years, but they just don't have, as you said before, a powerful lobby to represent them. I talked with Jeff Helms, who represents Alpha. He said that they would fight this bill, and of course, you understand it.
When you look at how deep in the hole we are, anywhere from 300 to 500 million, we've cut state spending. I don't know where the money's going to come from, but if you think about it, didn't the PAC program that then Treasurer Kay Ivey preside over lose $500 million?
Yeah,
So
they did.
To a pretty large degree, I think we have her to thank / blame for some of what we're going through right now.
Well, I hadn't really thought about that, Joe.
I think there are probably a lot of parents across the state of Alabama that would agree with you as well.
Jack just threw a bomb into the show.
Well, I mean, it's a fact.
Now, to be fair, though, to State Farm and Alpha, I have to say if you look at these rates in there are some people that are not paying the 3.6% that should be. So there's some disparities in there that we need to look at,
That looks like
too.
just an oversight.
That's
doesn't
an
it? That
oversight.
they're not paying
Yeah.
attention.
And-
Well, we've got to move on from that. There's just so much going on with the legislators being in session, and I sort of poke at these guys from time to time. We've got two bills that are up, and the charter school thing just flew right through. We've got charter schools in Alabama, but during the election cycle, every Republican basically ran against Obama. Is that correct?
Well, yes, and certainly everyone who Bob Riley supported attacked their opponent through Bob Riley's direct mail for being an Obama liberal.
Well, now, one of the things we discovered is that President Obama and Dale Marsh and Mike Hubbard agree with charter schools and Common Core. Something that Republicans do not agree on is Common Core. They do agree mostly on charter schools. So,
Wait a minute. Most Republicans do not support the Common Core.
no, they don't. They don't. But they support
Majority.
charter school.
Right. But so that's been a very interesting thing to watch over the
Some of
last
the
2 years.
rural Republicans in North Alabama do not support charter schools. They've got good schools.
Right.
It's in places in Montgomery where the education is so poor and awful with horrible local school boards that we need charter schools. But there are a lot of areas of the state that are not going to benefit from having
Like
them.
Huntsville, for instance,
Huntsville.
they have a great education
Walker
system
County,
there.
Winston County, up in that neck of the
We
woods.
got about 1 minute left. I mean, charter schools are here. Let's see if they'll be a success or not. Just wanted to say, at least they agree with the president on a couple of things.
Yeah.
The other thing here is Senator Marsh tried to get through more funding for the Accountability Act, the switcheroo too. Claire, it didn't go as far as he wanted.
No, and I somewhat have a little bit of an issue with that because obviously where I live and have children, I'm in a failing school district, but they kind of snatched some incentives out for those of us in those districts last year. But, to increase, going from 25 million up to 100 million, which that ultimately didn't happen, I think that's a little egregious because, you really just don't have bad public schools all across the state of Alabama. But I think you're also seeing that there's not as many people taking advantage of this either.
Yeah, only about half the people that could have, used half the money. They only used half the money in the fund already, and now they want to increase it.
Yeah, and I think you've got some senators. You take somebody like Holly and Dial, and they're not really supportive of some of these increases in
Right.
the schools and that sort of thing.
That's it. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more discussion and a lot of good stuff. Stay put.
The V is sponsored by Spot On Strategies Group.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka, the perfect escape for date night. a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Earlier today, I spoke with John Merrill, Secretary of State. He, General Strange, and Secretary Collier have come up with a revolutionary way of looking and attacking campaign finance, fraud, and neglect. Let's go to the interview with Secretary Merrill. You have joined forces with Attorney General Luther Strange, Secretary Spencer Collier, to do something that my peers say is revolutionary. You are tackling an issue that is a concern to all Alabamians. Can you tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it?
Well, we're very excited about the Alabama Election Fairness Project. This project is designed to ensure the credibility and integrity of the elections process, which means voter registration, it means actual attendance at the polls, it means votes that are cast during referendums, campaign finance issues, whether it comes to contributions that are received or expenditures that are issued.
So one of the things you're going to do is look at voter fraud, but also if there's any misconduct in the filings or contribution campaigns. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if it's unintentional, then that'll be revealed in the investigation. But individuals can go to alabamavotes.gov or sos.alabama.gov and file an anonymous complaint that will allow them to begin the investigation from our office. When we've done all we can do and we've exhausted our options, we would present it to the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. Then ALEA would advance it. If it requires a subpoena or a court order, they can ask for that. And then if everything is done right and well and they still have grievous concerns, they can put all of that information in a box, put a bow on it, present it to the Attorney General or present it to the district attorneys in that particular area and ask them to ask for an indictment or, furthermore, look for prosecution at the highest levels.
This is very interesting. I mean, it's not something that's been done before. You did not need a bill or any approval to do this. This is interagency approved by you guys.
That's exactly right. Just a cooperative and collaborative effort between people who are very interested in good government for the state of Alabama.
One of the things, with every member being a Republican, can you assure our viewers that it will be fair across
Bill,
the board?
that's why ALEA's participation is so very important, because these are trained law enforcement professionals who are unbiased and who don't have an agenda, a political agenda or otherwise, and they're nonpartisan. They can advance the investigation to the level where they think it needs to go. Then that's when they would present it to the prosecutors.
This is really about giving voters back confidence in their government. Is that correct?
That's exactly right, because what we want to do is to improve the integrity and the credibility of the elections process. And when people have confidence in that process, they're going to participate at levels that have never been exceeded in the state's history. That's our goal.
We want to thank you for your service to the state. It sounds like a great idea. Good luck with it.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for having me on, letting us share this with your viewers.
Great to have you. Claire, I think that what the Secretary is doing is really revolutionary. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it is, and it was interesting when I started looking at it. I thought there's no way in the world this would pass in the legislative process, which now we understand that this can be done administratively and regulatorily with these three agencies together. And I think that, you know, while we have all these tough ethics laws, but when it comes to elected officials, it appears that they're not always filling out their reports on a properly and timely manner. And I think that most all of them would want to do that and be good stewards of that, where the citizens would know. So I would think that they really wouldn't be that opposed to it unless they're doing something improper.
Well, we heard that when he went over to the House and suggested that they put some teeth in this, that the word was nada.
Yeah, back off.
Yeah. Susan, you spent a lot of time with campaign finance reports. What does this mean to you?
This means that website's going to get really busy, because all of those of us who go through these reports and see where they're shopping at Winn-Dixie out of their campaign accounts, paying for cars, or
Going to football games.
going to football games, paying for hotels and stuff. Never mind the being late and so things. Yes, Claire.
Now, Winn-Dixie, don't worry, don't start getting on Winn-Dixie, because they could be buying water and Cokes and Sprites, things for their office, honestly.
Honestly, they could, but anyway, there's a lot of us that are going to be real busy real soon.
All of us who monitor these reports as consultants or whatever, there's always been for time in memoriam a discrepancy between the reporting entity, those who contribute, and the reporting entity who receive the contributions. And I hope that John and Spencer and Luther will look at these and say, hey, we have a problem. We don't want people to go to jail, but we want people to amend their reports and fix what's wrong. I mean, Barron did research and found that there were PACs contributing in the 2014 cycle that had a P.O. box, no paperwork ever filed. They just made up a PAC name.
There are PACs that are still filing in the old system that haven't updated to the new system
With
yet.
paper.
With paper.
And one of the most egregious things, Claire, to use your term, there are state officials who report that they loan their campaigns as much as $100,000, but there's never any paperwork to back that up. Then at the end of the campaign, they have debt retirement. Are they taking what they retire and putting it in their pocket? I think in some cases that's probably happening.
Well, if that would happen, then that's something that ABI would investigate, and then Luther Strange's office would prosecute. That's what.
Or the
that's what
DA,
they're-
the Attorney General's office,
that's
or
what he
DA.
said. We got about less than 1 minute. I wanted to get to this Marriage Protection Act real quickly. Susan, you know Judge Hill, who sponsored this act. They tried to just fluster him over this thing. It didn't work out real well, did it?
I've been really excited to see how the Alabama House was going to react to Judge Hill. They didn't know what to do with him. He got up there. He was stern. He never shook. The Democrats got up and tried to, get him off his key, get him to misspoke, or get him angry. Just completely level, never flustered at all.
It's kind of a pandering bill, though, isn't it?
No
Claire,
doubt.
It is.
No doubt.
It is.
I mean, we know the U.S. Supreme Court's about to rule in June on the gay marriage issue. All of this frivolous legislation and grandstanding by everybody from Judge Moore to everybody else needs to stop. We need to take a breath and wait and see
Right.
what the court does.
Well, and even backing up, we were talking about money and taxes and tax breaks. They really want to go and pass a law like this, which is more than likely going to possibly be held and be unconstitutional. And then the state's got to hire lawyers and pay a lot of money to go and defend something that they know they're passing this unconstitutional. I mean, they're using money out of the general fund.
Well, we're gonna have
Meanwhile,
to-
we've got a budget deficit.
Yeah,
Right.
we're going to have to leave it right there. Judge Hill said he was responding to his constituents and fellow judges that were worried about this thing. So he got on the floor and spoke his mind. Anyway, you're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Come back. We've got a great segment coming up with Claire, Susan, and Jack. You're watching The V.
The V is sponsored by MediaWorks Communications, quality video production and marketing services.
Welcome to Alabama's newest entertainment destination, Wind Creek, Wetumpka. The perfect escape for date night, a getaway with your friends, or a relaxing poolside cocktail. Whether it's a day trip to enjoy the best steak in Alabama or a romantic weekend, the finest Southern hospitality is just a short drive away. Wind Creek, Wetumpka. Find your winning moment.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. This past week, a bill was introduced, HB 257, that I have termed the Star Chamber bill, in that it gives so much power to a small minority of House and Senate members that they would be able to control the budget of every agency, bureau, commission, et cetera, through the state. Susan, you've looked at this bill. What's your thoughts on it?
Big power grab, even bigger than last year's when they were just trying to control the State House. Now they're looking at trying to control every agency, bureau, by controlling them through their money strings, controlling them through their budgets.
Claire?
Well, okay, this is totally egregious. I mean, they're clearly trying to take the power from the office of the governor of the state of Alabama, because the governor's office is a powerful office. They're clearly trying to do that.
I would agree.
And I think this is dangerous and a little bit far stretching and overstepping to try to monitor every commission, board, statewide, like the Attorney General's office. What could happen there?
Right. I mean, this board could actually send the public examiners into the Attorney General's office. He does an audit, come back to this board and says, here's the audit. And they say, well, we don't like how the Attorney General is spending money on public corruption.
We know that.
Yeah. Well, they could take that money away and close down that division with the authority. What do you say to
They
that,
have
Jack?
thought of everything. You give Mike Hubbard 4 appointments on a board that oversees money, and he's got 23 indictments against him. Now, I'm sorry. And you're giving Del Marsh, who's a good guy, giving him 4 appointments. The governor has no appointments.
No appointment.
No one else has
The
an
lieutenant
appointment.
governor, I mean, nobody has any appointments. I mean, I hope that there are a lot of people out here watching this show this Sunday morning, because the legislators need to look at this and know what they're really voting on.
Right, and they really could go in and take the roads projects away from the governor.
Who's sponsoring the bill?
The bill is sponsored by Mike Hubbard, Mac McCutcheon, and John Knight.
Oh, there
John
you have
Knight's
it.
the one that's carrying it, right?
Right, John's carrying it, but we
That's
know.
probably because he's told he has to
Yeah,
carry it.
it
Yeah.
came
Of
out of the
course,
Speaker's
of course.
office, because this thing gives total control with no oversight. There is
I
nobody.
would hope that the Republicans in the House have the pelotas, which means in Spanish, to stop this. This is just unbelievable.
Or unless they want to have term limits. Unless they want to have term limits, then they can have something like this.
Well, I mean, the problem is this is very short-sighted, because they're not always going
It's
to be
to
in power.
punish the governor
And the lieutenant-
because
and the-
he threatened to take highway funds away from people who would not give his tax plan any consideration.
It's
And
just
I
too much
also
power.
And I also think it's also, there's a little bit of vindictiveness. It also would come after the Attorney General as well. It's
Sure.
to take power from the Attorney General's office and the governor's appointments and the governor.
I mean, Susan, doesn't this give the threat that at any time, if you don't do what the legislative body says, 12 members of the legislative body, they can come and investigate you?
Absolutely. And believe me, the Speaker said before the session started that they were going to try to take some of the power away from the Attorney General's office. They put that out in front. So this is definitely them trying to take control of everything. Oh, I don't like the way that you're ruling on this case. Well, I don't like the way that you're handling this situation, so I'm going to come over and punish you by rearranging your money.
Oh, and by the way, another public official, a congressman in Illinois, who was accused of misusing campaign funds, has stepped aside, like most honorable people who are in trouble do.
Well, we wrote an article this week about how that if one House member would stand up and call for the reorganization of the House, that this could start a chain reaction that would force Speaker Hubbard from office.
That's what I said. We're the
You've looked at this.
pelotas. I've been asking it since.
They're scared. I'm over there all the time. They're scared of him. They're absolutely, so many of these guys or these women are absolutely scared to death of him. They know how vindictive he is, and they're scared to go up against him.
Well, Brandon Mosley, who works for us at ALReporter.com, he travels the state and goes to all kinds of Republican meetings. And he said, before the release of those 85 exhibits and emails, that people were saying, oh, well, innocent until proven guilty, innocent until proven guilty. He says he goes to those same meetings now, Jack, and nobody's saying that. They're going, holy cow, did you see that
the
email?
same people who said OJ is guilty are the same people saying, well, Mike's innocent until proven guilty.
But those people aren't saying that anymore.
oxymoronic.
They're not saying that
the
anymore.
rumor has changed everywhere. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, even at the State House, lobbyists, everybody, members that
But
are
it's
under
all
their breath.
underground. You don't
Yeah.
hear anybody publicly say.
He doesn't have the support
Except for
that
us,
he thinks
and
he has.
we're afraid to start our cars in the morning.
It's all in a
so-
whisper campaign at this point.
Well, whispers are good. The voices can get louder.
Careless whisper. Guilty feet have got no rhythm.
One of the things that I think everyone should be concerned about in the Mike Hubbard camp is this is starting to touch some of the most powerful people in our state. It's already touched a bunch of them, but when it's starting to touch Richard Shelby, when it's starting to touch some Bob Riley and his family in a big way, when it's starting to go throughout the whole state and people are going, Mike is in serious trouble. I mean, somebody's gonna come to him, Riley or somebody, and say, you're gonna take the fall. Don't you think, Claire?
You know, one would think, I don't know. I mean, he's always listened to his mentor, Bob Riley. I mean, I think Riley would be the only one that could get him to do it.
I mean, don't you think, Jack, that they could go to him and say, look, you take the fall before it gets me in jail and somebody else in jail? And
Oh, I'm surprised they hadn't already done it. I mean, I know Mike probably has have a lot of Ambien at night to sleep because he knows this is looming, but I'm with you. At some point, the leadership has to go and say, okay, you're killing the party, you're killing the process.
I think it might be more nefarious than that, don't you, Susan?
Probably, but you got to look at it. The longer this case goes on, the more things like these 85 exhibits come out, the more it pulls other people in, more and more, whether it's Minda Riley or Bob Riley or, you know.
Well, I heard one of our senior politicos in the state the other day said, when did Bob Riley get so greedy? And that's starting to hit Bob. And that's when I think the worm may turn there. We got about 10 seconds. Jack, tell us how you really feel about something
Well,
this
to
week.
know how Bob Riley, you could go back and ask people that used to be in the chicken business with him. He's loved money for a long time.
Well, we're going to leave it right there on that sexy beast, Bob Riley. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com, and you can catch us every Sunday on your ABC affiliate throughout the state. Thanks for watching, and God bless the state of Alabama. God bless you and your family.